so we need to deal with it.
Mr. Stein.
The American economy is choking on a mass influx of foreign labor. The vast majority of jobs created in the last 8 years have gone to foreign workers, immigrants, not native-born citizens. Net effect, wages have been stagnant, marginalized American workers not in the labor force. And you're justifying a system of labor exploitation is what it boils down to, but you're saying is no free American will do this work. But why did so many millions of people fight and die in the American Civil War in the defense of a system of slavery to basically pick cotton? Well, they didn't believe free labor would pick cotton under the conditions. And so you saw all those people fight and die in the preservation of a system of economic privilege. And when you're making the argument, well, our food's going to cost more, well, we're going to have to pay a little more for people who are cleaning our bedpans, as a fundamentally immoral argument based on labor exploitation, it is wrong, it needs to stop. And the solution, the big difference between me and my colleague Ben Johnson is he doesn't believe numbers matter. As far as he's concerned, raise the sky, the limit, bring in 25 million a year, go grow to 1 billion people by the end of the century. Fair believes we need annual numerical limits, re-empower American workers, give the country a chance to catch up. Maybe our infrastructure could catch up. I get up in the morning at 4 o'clock to get to work because our highways are so choked with traffic, because our immigration levels are not calculated to match the needs, the domestic needs of the American society.
About 10 minutes left in our roundtable discussion this morning. We're talking about the future of immigration reform, and I want to come back to that subject, Mr. Johnson, as we look ahead to 2018. What is a realistic 2018 look like in your eyes when it comes to immigration? What will we see 12 months from now?
You know, I'm going to be honest and say that I don't know. I think that we're in a very unique political situation where I think the game has changed completely, given who's in the White House and the way the politics is being played right now. I mean, I'm not particularly hopeful about the language and the rhetoric, the fear and the scapegoating that's happening right now. I don't think is good for the immigration issue. This notion that immigrants are somehow responsible for traffic problems and they're responsible for health care problems. And I mean, laying the blame at the feet of immigrants for all of the problems that we face as a country is not only wrong, it's just misguided. It's not going to get us the answers that we need to those important problems. I want to end exploitation. I want us to have an immigration system that ensures that the workers that have those jobs get the wages and the salaries and the worker protections that they need. But even dramatically increased wages, we are still going to need immigrant labor in certain sectors of our economy. And our current system doesn't allow the kinds of legal immigration that we want and need to fuel our economy. I hope that the political debate will shift to a conversation about how do we build that kind of system. And I hope we'll move away from the angry, divisive rhetoric that paints decent, hardworking people as something other than members of our communities trying to build a better life.
People make money off immigration, okay? People make money. Corporations and others, they profit from it. A political party is trying to build its political base through immigration. How do you get to political compromise when you have all these corrupting influences that don't take an enlarged view of the national need? You take a look at the Democratic Party right now and you say, all right, are they going to sit down at the table with the Trump administration and the leaders in the Republican Party and say, we're willing to meet you halfway? There is not a shred of evidence right now.
So where do you think we're going to be in January 2019?
Well, basically, we're probably going to see a partisan, i.e. Republican package that somehow gets through either a piecemeal and others. It talks about many of the Trump proposals, the ending chain migration and others, because right now—
The wall?
Certainly going to be some wall funding in there. Yeah, I mean, they're going to try to deliver some of the things he wants. It's not going to be easy in the Senate, obviously, but in the end, there's an emerging consensus. What Trump has done is dramatically elevated the profile. Americans are beginning to understand why immigration is out of control. They're beginning to understand the Democrats are talking anarchy, immigration anarchy, and they're beginning to see why nothing gets done. In the end, you have to have some kind of limit on immigration. You can't just legalize everybody, let them all stay, and then turn around and say, we need more.
A little bit of time and a lot of callers waiting to talk to you, gentlemen.
But let's talk about that for a second, because the notion that people aren't willing to negotiate on immigration is just flat out wrong.
What's Durbin been, tell me one thing Durbin's been willing to do.
In 2006, Democrats and Republicans came to get a comprehensive immigration reform package, and both sides gave up a lot. There was a lot of enforcement. There was a lot of improvements to legal immigration. That happened again in 2009, and then again in 2013, recently, this Gang of Eight bill, where what was coming out of that was a massive increase in border enforcement. There was increases in legal immigration. So the idea that politicians can't and won't negotiate on this issue is flat wrong.
Let's bring in Brian, who's waiting in New Orleans. Line for Republicans. Brian, go ahead.
Mr. Stein, thank you for fighting. Mr. Johnson, we're going to resist you. And you are wrong, Mr. Johnson. They are undercutting the community here from the top and the bottom. They're bringing the brightest, and they're bringing those desperate workers in. Mr. Stein, you are on point. Thank you. We are fighting and resisting you, Johnson. You're an attorney. You have a job to do, Mr. Johnson. Your kids, they don't compete. They don't have to compete with these immigrants. So you're good, but we're going to fight.
Got your point, Brian. Let's go to Dave in Kingston, Pennsylvania. Line for Independence. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel that any country that has high unemployment and homelessness should have zero immigration. I think the United States right now needs a 10-year moratorium on all immigration. Also, we need to repeal the Hart-Celler Act of 1965, and we need to suspend the H-1B visa indefinitely, but with rare exception for a true genius, someone like a Werner von Braun or a Nikola Tesla.
Mr. Stein, I'll let you start.
Yeah, listen, right on point. I got to tell you, you know.
Would you agree with a 10-year moratorium?
Why do we have immigration? It's supposed to serve the American people and the national interest. It's an optional program. We don't have to have immigration for a sustained period of time to absorb and assimilate, build the highways, the infrastructure, the transportation system we need, improve public education, actually catch up and make sure immigration is compatible with the population growth levels we want, our environmental goals as a nation. There are all these factors immigration implicates, but we can't decide those now because of chain migration. He's exactly on point. That a timeout for, FAIR called for one in 1991. We said, look, the problem with these oversubscribed relative categories is we'll never catch up. They go back years. So unless you take a timeout or a breather, we can never reset and start anew. So the caller really, and the H-1B program, he's right on. The guy is telling you, guy's on point.
Mr. Johnson,
smart guy.
What would that timeout, what would a 10-year moratorium on immigration do?
It'd be devastating to the economy, devastating to families. Let's be clear about what a moratorium is. That means that you fall in love with somebody from another country, you don't get to marry them. You don't get to unite with them in the United States. If you've got somebody like Elon Musk or some other kind of really high-skilled immigrant who's trying to come to the United States to innovate and create jobs in the United States, we're going to say no to you for no other reason than we're enamored by this notion of a moratorium. The truth is that immigration flows have ebbed and flowed with the economy consistently for the last 100 years. So we do have ebbs and flows that drive the immigration needs and demands, and that's the way the system should work.
So the
idea that we should only have immigration when there's zero unemployment ignores the fact that there are certain areas of the economy and certain areas of the country where you do have incredibly low, effectively zero unemployment, and those folks that are desperate for people to move into their communities or for people to be drivers of their economies can and should be able to use the U.S. immigration system to achieve those results.
To Beaverton, Oregon, John's a Democrat. Good morning.
Hi, good morning to Mr. Johnson and Mr. Stein. I had 5 points. I'm also a Roman Catholic.
John,
so
did you say
migration?
Did you say 5 points? Let's just do 1 or 2, John. We're not going to have time for 5.
Persons have the right to find opportunities in their homeland. Persons have the right to migrate to support themselves and their families, and sovereign nations have the right to control their borders. Would you both agree on that?
Mr. Stein, would you agree?
Well, your second and third point were fundamentally inconsistent. I mean, there's no, beyond what the Pope is saying, there's no right to cross borders in search of work if you don't have the right to be in any country, and that's just the law of nations.
Mr. Johnson?
Look, I think we ought to be able to secure our borders. I think we ought to have an immigration system that allows us to determine who legitimately can be here and who we want to keep out. But we've got to regulate immigration system. We can't